Welcome everyone. It is 3:30, December 19th. We are short a couple members, but we have a quorum, I'm assured, for the Redwood Coast Transit Authority Board of Directors meeting. Why don't we call the meeting to order, please?
Director Fallman?
Here.
Director Cohen?
Here.
Madam Chair Keim?
I am here. Thank you. And yes, let's all welcome Mr. Fallman to our CTA.
Welcome.
Can we insert cheers? Yay! Okay, alrighty, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Why don't we approve the minutes from October 17th?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from October 17th.
I'll second the motion.
Alrighty, let's poll the vote.
Director Cohen?
Yes.
Director Fallman?
Yes.
Madam Chair Keim?
Yes, thank you. Alrighty. Do we have any public comment on those meetings, on those minutes? Seeing none. We've got a couple of items on consent. Have you had a chance to look over the consent agenda? No?
I didn't get this email to me.
You didn't get it?
No.
Okay.
Flying blind today.
You didn't receive either of my two emails? Oh, okay. I sent to the email that's listed on the city webpage, so it's like crescentcity.org. Yeah, so if you, it should be in that one. There was one with last night, maybe 7 or 8 p.m. with about 5 attachments, and then today one more with 1 attachment.
Okay.
Well, let's get him. Is there a packet up there in the dais?
Yeah, he's got a packet here.
Okay.
Should we take a break and just look through that?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the audit, because the auditors embedded it with a password, I had to send it separately. That's why
Okay.
it wasn't part of the main packet PDF. It was an additional 2 PDFs. Let me try some. What's the best email to use, Alex?
Okay, let's just take a break for a minute. We'll pause the recording. from break.
Okay, oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Okay,
So you want me to make a motion to continue 5A until our next meeting?
okay, perfect. We will move that until the next meeting. You'll go ahead and get that item for us?
Yeah, I apologize. It showed me that it sent to you, and but yeah, apparently it didn't go through, and it might have
Okay.
been due to the password protection that the auditors embedded into the files. But in general, it's a clean audit. Our reserves are increased, so it's generally good news on this audit.
Okay, great. Well, we'll look for that email then. Okay, number 6, presentation and discussion of the 2017-18 annual RCTA annual report, performance data.
Okay, enough with the good news then. This is
Don't do
our
that.
this is our annual report in its traditional format. Some of this looks back at fiscal year 17-18, so July 2017 through June 2018. The write-up kind of captures the overall look of the report. We can go through route by route in a moment. It was our first year after some difficult service reductions were enacted that took effect July 1, 2017, where we eliminated Route 10, which had been losing ridership dramatically in recent years anyway. And then we trimmed the first half hour of the morning and last half hour of the evening of the Crescent City local services in order to react responsibly to a reduction in federal funding that came through. So the results of that year we were hoping would be better than this, though. Our service was reduced by 12%, and that's in overall revenue hours compared to the prior fiscal year. But ridership dropped even more at 19%.
That is, Joe. Do you have any idea?
I think it's probably a combination of things, but certainly the Route 10 ridership started dropping precipitously when the Yurok Tribal Transit Services started running. So to me, that's the single biggest factor. But I think there's other headwinds at play too, but I think that's the biggest one.
Our ridership from the college?
It's started pretty good. I mean, this was actually that program really
Isn't part
kicked
of
into
this
high
year?
gear after this
Okay,
fiscal year
that's-
that we're analyzing.
Yeah.
The last year, the way the program worked is that we sold in bulk passes at a discount rate. So it was like phase one, it was like getting our toes in the water. So the ridership did increase there. We don't know exactly how much, but the new program where all student IDs for the College of the Redwoods and Humboldt State students are now flash passes that are good for rides. That didn't start until the summer semester, which was pretty much at the end of this fiscal year.
Can we watch that? Because I don't want to hear about the results from that a year from now. I want to kind of monitor what's going on with that. It was something I was excited about. I was glad it took us, I was glad we were able to implement it a year later than what I would have liked to have done, but at least we're doing it. And I'd just like to stay on top of it. I don't want to hear about it next December. I want to know if it's working, if it's not working, if we need to adjust it, that kind of stuff.
No, I agree, and I apologize for the delay in data. We are very technology low here. But we do have initial numbers. I don't know if we have them at our fingertips, but we've been tracking them over the first semester. And Chuck, do you remember about what the numbers were?
We've been between 150 and 200 for the College of Redwoods. I'm looking it up now.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have them look it up.
By the end of the session,
By your report.
There you go. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
it's been growing, but it's not the numbers we'd hoped for yet. And the Humboldt State numbers were even much smaller as expected, but there were some usage on the route. Some other points, Dial-A-Ride was down even more so than the rest of the system, which is interesting because there really wasn't any changes done to Dial-A-Ride to speak of, other than we implemented our automatic scheduling software during the fiscal year. That elimination of Route 10 that we would hope those riders would transition to using the existing Route 20 trips that still go through Klamath, didn't really happen, although Route 20 wasn't down as far as the other routes, so maybe it did to a certain extent. I believe Route 20 was down about 6% versus the others. All our local routes 1 through 4 in Crescent City all lost ridership, with the exception Route 3 actually increased its productivity slightly, although it had a net loss in ridership because it's not running on Saturdays anymore. That was one of the reductions we did in July of 17, was we trimmed Saturday down to where routes 1 and 3 don't run, just 2 and 4. And so that's how Route 3 gained productivity but lost net riders. So I knew you guys would ask me that. The Route 199 actually enjoyed a year of ridership increase, and we attribute that to its increased use during the summer months for recreational trips. There's a group that found out about it and uses it to go out to the river in groups quite frequently during the summer. So that's carrying the route. Other than during the winter, it's about as poor as it used to be. Our overall ridership kind of mirrors what's happening nationally and in California in most locations, except it's a little more severe. And I think the main reasons of that are the fact we have a new competing transit system in part of our county. So going through the report, the fine data of the report here, we have a new fares matrix. I'm going to hand this out because it wasn't ready at time of publication.
You emailed that to us. Okay. Yeah.
This is also a request of a short-range transit plan. We were trying to get their arms around it. Can you just make a table or something? Okay, so that'll get inserted then into page 2 of the report. And this was the fare restructuring that took effect October 1, 2017, so 3 months into the fiscal year. So we didn't have a whole fiscal year of the new fare structure, but mostly. It goes through a little history of the system. Services basically, or ridership's been kind of slumping since 2012 actually, but this has been the most dramatic year of ridership loss, was 17-18. So the most fresh changes we did, the last couple pages of the history cover the streamlining of the local routes, reducing the first half hour of AM and last half hour of PM service, the elimination of Route 10, and then the pass and fare restructure, which turned out to be a fare increase for some folks, a fare decrease for others depending on their demographic. And then our most recent change is actually outside the reporting period, but in July 2018 we moved that unproductive late night trip of Route 20 down to Arcata to midday. So far it's doing okay, but not as great as I had hoped. So then we go into the system summary from last year. We talk a little bit about the capital projects that we did make a lot of progress on last year. We introduced 4 new buses at the start of the fiscal year, which is about a third of our fleet because we run 13 total. Some of this you guys know, but with Alex new, it's good to review. So it was a major infusion of new vehicles, and it was long overdue because we hadn't received any prior new buses since 2013. So there was a gap there where we quit replacing buses for a while. Then we added a 5th new bus last year when we acquired an adopted bus, I call it, for lack of a better word. And it was a bus that had started its service life in Calaveras County on a commuter service into Stockton, and then the service was discontinued, and Caltrans then reallocated the bus to one of its more needy, interested parties, and that was us. So we got 5 new buses into the fleet, or 4 new ones and 1 lightly used one last year. We did some continued improvements to our maintenance and operations facility there on Williams Drive at the fairgrounds. And the big one last year is we got the new electronic security access gates in. So that's really been a huge upgrade that controls vehicle and pedestrian access to our facility. And there was also upgraded fencing around the entire perimeter that year. We installed
Did you notice once that was up, I mean, hadn't there been some vandalism and some other things, so that really sort of is going to prevent further damage to assets?
Yes, we did. There were cameras We had break-ins maybe back in about 2015 where several of the camera systems were stolen out of the buses, some other vandalism type things, and then fences cut and stuff. And yeah, since the Gates project went in, we've noticed none of that activity. So it's been successful. Then we look at some of our grants to just kind of briefly touch on how we're funded and some of the specific grants that rise and fall during the year. Of course, we discussed the 5311F, which is FTA money for intercity bus service. That's the one that we were doing really well for several years at about $300,000 a year, and then they ran low on funds and cut us down to 122.
Did that go back up though?
It did bounce back. I think we got programmed for just under 200,000 this year. I don't expect it to go much better than that though, because under their new criteria, I think we scored about as well as we can.
Okay,
But yeah,
what
it
about
bounced back
SB1
a ways.
funding that we were concerned about?
I'm sorry?
SB1 funding that we were concerned about losing?
Yes. So,
That's all part of this.
no, the SB1 funding is separate, and fortunately, it'll continue to be received by Redwood Coast Transit. So that was a bullet dodged. So yeah, that funding is a major help because that came in with about 100,000 increase right about the same time this federal funding fell. So that's really helped our story and staying afloat for
And
sure.
that kind of supplemented, that was something that supplemented what we lost from the federal government.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
It definitely
Okay,
did.
so we're still around that 300 range, but just coming from two different pots.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it kind of came out in the wash that we lost some, but then we gained some new. Yep.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
No, you're following it perfectly. And then we have our 5311 without the F, which is standard formula funds from the Federal Transit Administration for rural areas. That's been creeping up a little bit, and our allocation's a few thousand higher than it was a few years ago, so that's good, generally good news. It's not a lot of money, but we certainly need it. Then we go into our performance. So on page 7 of the report, we have our overall system performance, describes the service area. You see that our high water mark here was fiscal year 11-12, where we carried about 155,000 passengers per year. And our low mark in the last snapshot of the last 8 years that I could get at was what we just did, which was 100,000 in fiscal year 17-18. So, you know, we've
Want
lost.
to know my take on that?
Yes.
That was the height of the recession. So people didn't have the funding for their own cars and vehicles. And I think now that we're coming out of it, people are now able to make those purchases and get their own transportation.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think fuel costs had just started to go down around then. They were pretty high at the first part of the
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly where they were. It went over 10 years because I was following all that with when SB Prop 6 was before that. And yes, gas prices were very high back then.
Mhm.
They are much lower now, and they've continued to go down, actually.
Yep. So those are certainly factors that definitely are probably contributing to some of our struggles.
I think in this type of demographic of our area, I think it very much is. If you're in a more suburban area, everybody has cars. But when you're in a low-income area, it just isn't as prevalent. And I think I'm seeing, I just kind of my take on it. I think that's what's happening.
No, that makes sense. So on page 8, sort of a couple different looks at the same kind of sad portrait. Our revenue hours went down, as I mentioned, 12% last year, so it's to be expected that some ridership would go down as well, even as surgically precise as we tried to do the cuts. And that's for sure the situation. Productivity declined from a little over 6 passengers per hour, probably 6 1/4, down to maybe 5.8 or 9. So that's worrisome that, our consumption of the service we put out there went down a little. We reduced the service quite a bit.
Can I ask another question?
Mhm.
Because again, Joe, I'm not super familiar with all the different routes and stuff. But when I came on 2 years ago, was about the time that you guys were moving the Safeway route and putting in the new stop.
Yeah.
How is that route doing? By moving that over, did that stop any at all? Did it?
We moved the Safeway route served by 3 or 4 of the routes. So most of our routes, more than half of our routes go there.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of hard to tell. They're kind of all in a little bit of a slump. But red and blue go there. One of them we had to stop going in there because on time was still not enough on time, running time to get back to Cultural Center. They're all the routes, the 4 Crescent City routes are all based at Cultural Center. They go out and serve the community and come back within a 25-minute or so envelope. Then they rest for 5 minutes and go do it again. And yeah, one of the ones that was initially planned to serve Safeway, we had to pull out of there and leave people off up at on 101 because we were just too late. It was taking like too many minutes to get in there. I believe that was red, right? Which route did we not go into Safeway with? We had to pull it out of there? Yeah, it was the red one that comes out to the west side, comes all the way around, and it was just taking too much time at the end to go in there. But blue goes in there, gold goes in there, orange, and then the regional routes.
I just feel that the people using that are the elderly, and, you know, being able to be dropped off right there was probably a big convenience to them. And
Yeah.
I'm just not sure that dropping off in 101, that they can even walk all the way down there, or even across the parking lot. I know it's not that far, but for some it may be, especially in the winter months, and just with the traffic around. So I'm just wondering if that hurt us at all. But like you say, it's hard really to tell if it does. The other thing I've noticed, and I noticed it again the other day, is we still have the little stand out front, and somebody was there the other day waiting for a bus. And I said, buses don't run right here. So do we have any plans to remove that?
What stand is that?
Right here.
Oh, this one,
Shelter,
yeah, this one. Yeah, no, we definitely have plans to move it. It's just, as we've talked about, there's not a lot of ability for me to do these kind of on-the-ground capital projects when I'm far away between meetings. So, no, it's definitely on, and actually learned something today about our newer style bus shelters vis-a-vis these older ACE shelters. These are weathering better. This one's been out there forever and forever and forever. And it was pointed out to me that it's not rusting because it's constructed out of aluminum, and the newer ones that they started buying maybe 4 years ago or whatever, they look nice, but they are a different material, and they're struggling with our climate and the wetness, so they're starting to rust. So,
That's not good.
no.
So maybe we need to, as part of our ongoing next year's goals, is to look into where did those come from? Obviously, what we're buying now isn't working. Maybe look for other vendors and not to buy any more of those. For someone who lives on the ocean here, it's
Yeah.
really important to make sure that you get something that's going to last.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll be ordering probably 2 more shelters shortly in the next 2-4 months, so we'll have a chance to do that legwork between now and then. See
Yeah,
if we
let's
can
not
find-
order 2 more of the ones that aren't holding up.
I agree. They're also, Chuck can attest to, the newer style's a bit of a maintenance burden. They all are, but the new style's got its challenges, right, Chuck? So yeah, that'll be okay to switch to something else. I'll definitely get on that.
So until we get that shelter removed, can we put a notice on there that this is not
Okay.
a current stop with a schedule?
Yes.
Or map of other stops.
Yeah, or a map of other stuff, just to help that, like, person.
That random, it's not all the time.
No,
I
it's
drive-
very infrequently, but,
But I just felt really bad the other day.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, we can definitely do that.
thank you,
You're welcome.
thank you. Okay, moving on.
Page, I'm sorry.
I'll sit back and keep my
Page 9 went through what we already touched on, what's some of the problems and reasons why the ridership is down. So I don't know if we need to beat that any further. Let's jump right into the stats.
Well, I do have one question.
Okay.
So, do you think that, I mean, is there feedback from other communities that are seeing similar declines? What are they doing to inject some some use into ridership, if anything? I don't know. I mean, I don't want to just throw my hands up and say, oh, well, it's declining, nothing we can do about it, when there are people here that could, if they knew more, if we were, we've already talked about advertising and that kind of thing. We're doing any of that kind of outreach?
I think that would be the first thing I would suggest, and that other transit agencies around the state are trying, is increased marketing. Just to remind folks that, yeah, just because gas is cheap and you can drive doesn't mean you necessarily want to. So I think marketing would be something that we've talked about, and we're all in consensus that it needs to be done. It's just a matter of finding a way with the current model to get it done. Beyond that, I think we're on the right track. We have a later item where we're continuing to introduce technology into Redwood Coast Transit. It never existed before here.
Right.
So I think we should continue to do that, because some of it produces customer conveniences, some of it produces both customer conveniences and robust data that we can use to make better decisions with. So
Right.
that's all positive generally.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are two big things I think we could do. The short-range transit plan is underway. We're like right maybe in the 30 or 40% progress level of this plan. And I'm guessing we're probably going to see some sort of update or document on it in February when we get together again. So hopefully there'll be some ideas for service changes from our consultants that maybe we hadn't thought of before. That's why we want to have new eyes on the system. So there might be some service changes we can implement as soon as next summer or the year after that would make the system more attractive, maybe meet some transit need that we're currently not meeting right.
Okay.
That kind of thing. For example, I'll throw one out there that I've thought about. Relatively low cost, we could start a morning trip down in Klamath to replace the old Route 10 trip that was our best remaining trip that got cut. Wouldn't cost a fortune running into Crescent City, then at least we're providing that option. That's just one little thought, but there's little things we can do to probably try to make the service more attractive. Maybe there's something we can do better in town here around the bell times. I think we're going to have the consultants are looking at the school service. So yeah, there's some ideas out there, but it's not easy to get people to ride the bus. Either they're inclined to or not. So let's jumping into the stats for the first page. On page 10 is the overall system, so that includes dial-a-ride and all the fixed routes thrown together into one category. It shows our overall operating cost. I wanted to touch on this. So the key to the colors on the right is if it's generally a negative change, it's in orange or orangish red, whatever it come out as, and positive is green. So in the right-hand column.
Hang on, let me get online. If this is in black and white, the copy in front of me.
Here, I've got a couple color copies.
No, that's okay. I have it electronically right here. Let me just. There it is.
Sorry about that. Tech problems. I'm just not a techie. Sometimes these things just
Better
throw me for a loop.
to be
Rachel's wonderful.
not a techie and not a trekkie. That was it.
Oh, are we looking at this one?
Oh, no,
No,
no.
no, no, we're not. I've got two. So we're,
We are on page 10 where we start to go through
Yeah.
the colorful tables for each route.
I have a colored copy right here.
Okay. So the first cost I wanted to point out is our operating costs went up 6% versus the year before, and that was even reducing service hours by 12%. And the driver of that is that our labor costs with First Transit are higher, and that was so that they could comply with the minimum wage increases statewide. So it really affected us more than a lot of other transit properties in the state, because most places the drivers make quite a bit over minimum, so it didn't really affect them. But here, most of our driving staff was right at or a little above minimum wage. So as it's increasing, it's having a direct impact on us.
So it's going to affect us every year.
Yeah, we're going to see this keep happening, and we're going to need to sort of plan for it strategically, because our costs are going to keep going up.
6% all came from just
Labor?
labor?
Yeah, I think so, because fuel wasn't much different in price between the 2 years. It was kind of steady. So most of it was that. A little bit of it was my contract, but not a lot.
We better watch that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then as you go down, kind of just to sort of explain, because it's all a bunch of new numbers and jargon and stuff, especially for Alex. The next one is operating cost per passenger, and that went really in the wrong direction, 32%. So that's a combination of the number we just talked about, our rising cost of delivering service, with the fact that less people rode. So that's how that formula went up so bad, because we have less passengers and it's costing us more money to serve them. Same with the next one down, where it's cost per revenue hour, except the rise isn't as much. This one's more directly attributed to the labor increase. And then we put out less service. So the prior year's figures, we were really lean, probably one of the leanest in the state, at $58 an hour. That's what we call our fully loaded cost, which is the cost to pay Chuck, me, everybody, fuel, divided by the number of hours that we put out there, which the year before was almost 20,000 revenue hours. This last year we put out 17,200. So as you can see, that number's a smaller divider number, and our costs went up a little. So that's how our rate went up to $70.71 per hour. Passengers is 100,062, down 19% as we talked about. On productivity, the drop isn't as bad because, you know, we did put out less hours. So people are still riding the bus almost as much as they were before, but not quite. So we're at 5.81 riders per revenue hour system-wide this last year versus 6.33 the year before. Our passengers per mile is not down just to 1/100th of a point. So that's a very small drop there. 12% on hours and 15% on miles is the drop versus the prior year. And our fare box revenue is a biggie. You're going to hear a lot about this in the short-range plan. And it was in the audit that we continued for February, so we'll look at it again there. But this is the amount of fares that came in. It dropped, you know, dramatically from 205 to about a little under 140, which is a 32% drop. We expected some of that. Some of it's just less people rode. And then some of it comes down to our new fare structure for the regional route is more rider friendly. That's why I was so disappointed to see the numbers weren't great, because maybe people still haven't heard about it, but I find that strange. But maybe we just need to get that word out better, because now the cash fares are much more reasonable for the single trip to Arcata than they ever were before. Before they had to pay, to go anywhere south of Pime, they had to pay $30 one way, and then we created a new system that's zonal based, so the same trip might be $4, $6, $8, much more affordable. But the ridership didn't respond as positively as we'd hoped about.
So what kind of outreach did we do for that Arcata route?
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, we did a brand new schedule. We put that on all the buses, so anyone that ever rides, as soon as they go to pay, the driver's like, okay, where are you going? Okay, $6, and they're going to be like, it's not 30. So I mean, if they rode or knew someone that rode, they should have heard about it. But did we do any mass marketing? Absolutely not. We don't have any. We didn't do any mass marketing of our system at all. We updated the website, but that's the extent of what we did. Okay. Brochures and the web. So that's the system-wide thing, and we do a dive into each route, starting with dial-a-ride. And sorry about the royal blue. It's a beautiful color. I'm not sure, I couldn't get it out of there. It was some sort of Excel glitch. But anyway, the numbers on the right-hand column, the colors are true. So the numbers are generally down. Our operating cost per passenger went way up at 51% for that ride, just because so many less people rode. And dial-a-ride's an interesting creature in that as long as there's some people riding, actually lower demand can cause a lot of negatives, because drivers have nothing to do in between pickups. Instead of keeping busy, dropping off one person, going and pick up another, boom, boom, boom. So that when it starts to get slower, they spend more time kind of waiting between pickups and drop-offs. So that we definitely are experiencing some of that. So yeah, Dollar Ride fell more than any other route, and in a way that's, you know, that's okay because it's a very expensive service to provide, but ideally we would want them riding fixed route instead, and then that didn't rise at all either, so it's interesting. The next page, on page 12, isolates just the 4 Crescent City routes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, they're color coded as well. They didn't do too badly, but they, you know, they suffered a drop. Our operating costs on those actually dropped a little because of the hours reduction that we did, even though our per hour rate's higher. So we actually had a lower net operating cost for the locals. Our cost per revenue hour went up 12%. Passengers went down 5% per revenue hour. Our passengers per mile actually crept up ever so slightly. I'm not sure how that happened. And then our fare box revenue dropped considerably. And this is an approximation. One thing we didn't do is go through each route and tally that it's total and then put a proxy of the number of passes used. So this fare box figure is a very general figure per route. We could dig down further if we had time per route, but in general for the 4 together was down 17%.
But it's labor intensive to try to figure out all that data.
Yes. Yeah, it's all in spreadsheets that Chuck provides, and then I have to crunch it into this format, for example.
Okay.
Or for other formats like our NTD report, state controller's report. But yeah, it's not as easy to work with as you'd hope. Route 1, which is our route that goes counterclockwise, starting from the cultural center and up and around. That route is our second best route, but it had a bad year.
Why do you think it had a bad year?
Just like the other routes, it was down 23%, which is worse than our 19% system-wide average, so it actually did a little worse than the rest. Its productivity wasn't bad, so that tells me it was mostly due to the hour per day service reduction and some, and Route 1 no longer ran on Saturday. So that Saturday thing, it was one of the things that we received the most negative feedback about after the fact. So it may have been one of the reductions that was felt most painfully by the riders.
So how do we put it back in?
We could decide to, in the budget for next year, we could bring it back. It's just a matter of having 2 buses on the 4 routes all day on Saturday, or part of a day. It could be a compromise, versus 1. So yeah, we could bring that back as fast as the summer if you guys would like.
Spring.
What about spring?
We could do the service changes whenever you'd like, as fast as we can. We try to save money on the brochure printing. We try to do them all at the same time and do it and batch the changes together. So if there's any other changes that the board wants to try to do, what we've been doing in the past is we have our strategic planning workshop in the spring as a board where we meet over at the ops center and we talk about all kinds of detailed stuff on what we can do for service planning, and then we implement in the summer. If you guys want to speed that process up, we could probably try. I can get you some numbers by February on how much it would cost to bring the Saturday back.
I think my concern is that we are laxed on response. If we're having an issue and we have identified a problem, I don't want to wait a year to fix it. You know, I don't know that this is going to be a big fix. I'm not even sure you know, if it's
If that was the one item
reasonable.
that got the most negative feedback, then that would be the one item that would go to the top of the list of modifications.
And it's pretty easy to bring back. I mean, we have all the old schedules.
Chuck, what's your thought on it?
It's going to affect our staffing.
That's why I'm asking you. What's your thought on it? Do you think it's something that the writers, and it's going to be helpful, or do you think it's going to hurt us on the staffing end, that the ridership isn't going to make a difference and it's going to be a wash? Okay. Then maybe that's just our answer. I kind of would like to just know that, though. I'd like to know what the dollars and cents are. Someone else, this isn't the first time I've heard the negative of the Saturday being removed. So, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that these numbers aren't good. And we really, really need to look at.
Outreach.
And you live it daily. You know, what are we gonna do to change these numbers? And if we aren't, we can't just. What can we do to help increase your ridership?
Do we need to go talk to the clinic on Washington and drop off schedules over there?
Okay. Can you come up to the mic? Because we're having
speak
this
at
great
the-
conversation and no one gets to hear it in La La Land. Because we do have one listener out there, I know we do.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So I guess what I want to know is what can we do to help you? Do we need to invest more in outreach? Do we, how are we going to get this ridership?
That's the two things that come to my mind are this, is one is the marketing and getting the word out and letting people know. Curry County advertises on our radio station. Okay. You know, I don't have no idea if that's working for them or not, but I know they were doing it pretty consistently for a while. Another idea that I have would really require some volunteers. If we could get some folks who would be trainers, who would actually get on the buses and learn the systems, and we could go to senior centers and talk with those folks and say, let us take you for a day and show you what it's like to ride the buses in town. If we could have something like that put together. It's cost intensive to hire anybody to do it, but if we...
But there's volunteers out there. We
Yeah.
have women and gentlemen who would take the time to ride with them.
Yeah, because most of what we're dealing with is just an education process.
I would do it for a day.
If we could even find some young people at the high school who would be willing to take that on as a project to show other high school students how it is to ride the system, how it works.
Okay, well, let's set up a meeting to get a better idea from you, Chuck, of what you want to see, what that looks like. Does that look like 1 or 2 days a week? Is it going to be 2 to 4 hours? I want to see what that looks like, so that then myself or Heidi or whoever can go to the senior center, go to the high school and say, this is what we want to do. I have no problem doing that. And see what their feel is on it. So over at the senior center, you got that, you got the Redwood apartments behind them, whatever it is. I used to sit on that board. You sit on that board now? So you would be a great person to go over there and say, this is what we want to do, and I want to take some people around. You know, and wherever else we can think of, but we need to see what that looks like so we can take it out. And I think that's a great idea, because that's something that we can do that won't cost anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I already have a lot of people that come to my business on Dial-A-Ride.
Right. Oh, I imagine so, yeah.
And I'll take some schedules and put them out there, and whatever we can do to do this outreach. If we don't have it in our budget, I'm free.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm happy to help, because these are dismal numbers. And I really do feel like a lot of the changes that we've initiated are good. I'm just not sure people know about them.
You're right. Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue.
Okay.
And then a couple of other ideas is if we could get like the newspaper and the radio station to give us some community service time, and
They will. So again, write up a 30-second spiel of some sort, or what you want, or some bullet points of what you want to say, and I'll write something up. And yeah, we just gotta plug it on the community.
We'll get it, the community calendar.
Somehow we'll finagle that one. I mean, not, but yeah, we'll
It's
somehow
just-
for seniors outreach or kid outreach, we'll find some way to funnel it through. There's gotta be something that we can put it on through.
Yeah, and then there's also newsletters that different organizations will put out that we could jump on there too.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Those were really, really good suggestions.
Okay. So, moving on, Joe. So, so it looks like we've got a lot to work with for the performance data. A lot of opportunities, say. Okay. And so over the next, holiday season for some light reading, we can maybe delve into some ideas for that. Do you want to keep going on the data? It's each route is about average. I bet, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the 2018-19 budget amendment. You want to talk to us about that? Yes.
This item is in tandem with the next item that we're doing today, so we can have a couple of these we need your budget adjustment ahead of you. This is just two things that were anticipated on the grant and anticipated expenditure amount of so we took the budget, we need to bust the license on it, the grants for today, to do the 2 years of work and keep that and we need to the buses are more expensive than they initially thought when we applied for these couple of years ago, and so we need that more local match so we actually got $240
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-19-05, approving RCTA fiscal year 2018-19 budget amendment number 1, adjusting exact bus purchase revenues and expenditures and committing additional PTMISEA to bus purchase. Do you want to do 8 in unison with that or no? Okay,
Separately? Yeah.
so that is my motion.
Second the motion.
Okay. Hold the vote, please.
Director Fallman,
Yes.
Director Cohen,
Yes.
Madam Chair Kime.
Yes. So where does that leave our reserve at?
504.
Our reserves, as we touched on briefly in the continued item of the audit, our reserves stood at the end of fiscal year 17-18 at, they've increased nicely since we're at 348,945. That's cash reserves, so that's not the same as our PTMI-SCA balance. Our PTMI-SCA balance has, with this allocation to make this happen, that would drop it down to,
The 504,
Yes.
568?
Okay.
Yes.
perfect.
Okay.
and an item I'm going to bring back to you guys either in February or April, pretty soon, will be to take another look at our expenditure plan on that, now that we, two years down the road. We have found new sustained source for bus stop improvements that's plenty enough to handle as fast as we can barely deliver projects. So I'm thinking we may want to allocate a little bit more of this remaining PTMI-SCA to the bus replacements, because it's absolutely critical. So 2 years ago, we thought we could use some of it for bus stops, but I don't think that, with the SB1 money that came in, I don't think we need to do that anymore. So I want to bring that back to you guys for discussion in a couple, 3
February.
months.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-19-06, approving purchase order 2018-19-06 in the not-to-exceed amount of $322,000 to create bus sales for the purchase of 2 low-floor buses for the RCTA Crescent City local route fleet, and authorizing the general manager to complete the purchase and execute all documents.
Second the motion.
All right.
Director Cohen,
Yes.
Director Fallman,
Yes.
Madam Chair Kime.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, getting buses.
Yep. Our storefronts, we love them.
Now, did I notice on the back of a bus, there was a ad?
Yes.
Not on a billboard, but just on the back of the bus?
Yeah, and that's the way the program's set up to be now, because we don't have the hardware to put the holders on. It's sort of another path we could go, and they don't work real good on our fiberglass bodies either.
I think it looks fantastic.
Good. Yeah, it seemed to be the better way to go with these cutaways.
I don't go
I
will pay
was-
attention and go follow it.
I was sitting behind a bus at a stoplight, and I just got the biggest smile on my face. It was a contour ad. It looked great.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it was
Great.
wonderful. Okay,
Yep.
and I liked it.
Good to hear.
It looked better than I thought it was going to look. Let me put it that way.
It's good. We're really excited about getting, they're our first ones that got on. We're still waiting on a couple other clients, one big one that I need to follow up with her on. But yeah, it was great that the contour one finally come through.
But the fact that there's no hardware, so the removal of those will be easy, or you could even put one right over the top of it, I guess.
Yeah, you can do either one. It's probably best practice to try to remove them each time, because
Yeah.
they leave a little residue underneath. But yeah, that'll all be part of the model. So when their time's done, the vendor will remove those. But yeah, that buy was 6 months, so we'll see those until spring.
Excellent. Then they'll want to start promoting the new terminal.
Right?
That would be
So
good.
Our new buses, we'll have these nice new shiny buses with some nice new shiny ads. I like it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay,
Good job, Joe.
Thank you.
all right. Number 9,
Number
transit
9.
technology.
Our favorite subject. So
Well,
this is
you
an
know-
ongoing one.
It's hard to capture that data without it, isn't it?
That's true. You're just guessing, as we've talked about. So some of these projects generate operational data for us. Some of them do other things like increase security.
Right.
So I was basically, for a while at least, I want this to kind of be a standing item so that we keep moving on these capital projects, because they're really important. So the format of today's updates, we just kind of go through the technologies that are in place, in progress, or being planned for. The onboard video surveillance is already completely in place. We did that about a year ago, so all the vehicles have cameras that capture audio and video. And our vendor, I should say, is Apollo Video. They're one of the better ones in the business. And we've been very happy with them. I know Chuck uses the system a lot to replay and look at any incidents. It's just, so it helps from a risk perspective as well. We have CTS Dial-A-Ride Transit Schedule Master or something like that it's called. It's been deployed for a little over a year, and just recently we started mastering it to the point where it's producing good reports on our Dial-A-Ride activity. It maintains the client database, which is very important. So this is, prior to that, it's been magnets and paper and pencil for 20 years here. So this is a huge step forward because there are tablets on board our $2 ride vehicles that the drivers interact with, and that data automatically populates in there to create the reports. So our dispatchers don't have to spend much time the next day going back and entering manual data, entering everything. So it's a huge plus for us on data and efficiency. Google Transit, we've been involved with Google Transit for at least 3 or 4 years. And every time we do a service change, like for example, we talked about bringing back the Saturday Route 1 and 3 a few minutes ago, I would need to go into Google Transit. We have a subscription to a portal that makes it easier on dummies like me. So I would go in there and make sure that data's in there so that when you pull up your Google Maps, those trips become available for trip planning. So we're already in there for all our routes. It's just something that happens routinely now as part of every service change. You have to make sure our GTFS data is correct. We have these GeoTab AVL emitters that are on board all the buses, or maybe all but one, where we had a little bit of a conflict. And they emit the bus's location and a few other basic things about the bus's activity, and that can be viewed through the online portal. It's a very kind of low-end, simple AVL system, but it's a start, so it's been live for about a year now. It's very limited in its capabilities, but the fact that the emitters seem to be accurate is good, because the next project on the list, if you turn to page 2 in the table, is the double map real-time app for riders. That is actually, the way I understand it, it's going to take advantage of the signals being emitted from the geotabs and then put it into both a public-facing app so we can promote that our riders will download the app and they can see where the buses are and how long until it gets to their stop, which is really that's state of the art. That's what's happening in the rest of the transit world. So we'll be catching up there. And as well as the double map should generate some pretty good planning data for us as well in the dispatch office and the planning office. One thing that we're going to want to talk about, and we'll probably go deeper into it at our workshop in the spring, but if we want to invest a little more money, we'll get even more out of this system, because if there are not, tablet computers inside the vehicles, then we're not going to get all the data we could get. So that's something that we'll want to evaluate and see if we want to spend a little money on extra. First Transit's providing us the basic system under their contract, as they promised us a year or so ago. But if we want to get more of the premium experience to see who got on where, which is it's the holy grail for a planner. If we want that, we probably need to cough up for the tablets for all the vehicles. So that's something that we'll want to be thinking about.
And you'll bring us figures on what all that'll cost?
Yeah, I'll bring that to you in the spring. Right now, we're shooting for an initial deployment of the basic system maybe in a month or so. We have a conference call that Chuck and I are going to be on again next week to keep that moving forward. Here's an exciting one. We were going to unveil this today, but tragedy struck. But the mobile ticketing project has lurched forward. This board gave me direction that they wanted to see some of this happen immediately. So we entered into an agreement with Token Transit, which is currently the leader in the field, to where they, and there's no real expense up front for us. They just take a percentage of fares once we go live. So we'll definitely be live with this by the time the board meets again. We were shooting for this one, and we got held up because we need to have a revenue account set up for Token Transit to deposit our share of the fares after they process it, and that was a little more difficult than it probably should have been. But anyway, First Transit has stepped up. Those guys are awesome, so they're going to be providing the revenue account. So we'll definitely be live on this in January. There's already, I think I pulled up the app. You can see our logo, we're not fully up yet. The way this works is a passenger will, a lot of it comes down to marketing, which we've talked about, we've got issues there. But what we'll need to do is promote the availability of it on the website and in the buses, and then passengers download the app, the Token Transit app, and within that app, they'll see like maybe 100 transit agencies around the country, but they'll find our Redwood Coast one, and I think they'll find it because it's the closest. Forget if Sam said that. But anyway, they select Redwood Coast Transit, then they'll see our different fare medias, if they want to buy one cash trip, 2 zones, if they want to go from Gasky into Crescent City or whatever, they can find it, and they'll load up a profile with their card, and they'll make the purchase button, and then they'll have a pass will pop up on their phone that our drivers can visually validate and let them on. And then that goes to Token Transit headquarters, they process it, and at the end of the month send us our share of the proceeds. So, I mean, we'll see how fast it gets adopted. I think some people will definitely use it, though. I know we've had issues with some of our tourists and travelers and stuff that have tried to use Greyhound and whatnot, and they're always wanting to buy tickets on their phones, and we've had Greyhound that's not set up that way. So this will be, I think it'll be a way for sure to appeal to some of the market out there. So that'll be coming up in the next few weeks. The onboard Wi-Fi is a project that I've had experience delivering successfully at my last stop down in the Bay Area. I'm still working on getting quotes, but I know the ballpark from what we paid in Petaluma. It's a few $100s per bus, plus, like $30 a month for the airtime per vehicle. So there's some costs involved. So I was actually going to probably have that be part of our discussion at the workshop in the spring. We also face some of the challenges here is I think our routes that it would be most appreciated on are probably the ones where it'll work the worst too, with some of the issues along 101 on the long ride down to Arcata. It'd be great if it did work well, but we're a little concerned about coverage along there. But that's something we can do. In Petaluma, our experience was even a small city system where people weren't on the bus very long, we still saw really strong usage, especially in our student market. So they like it, and it's a pretty good project. It's just, do we have the money, and do we want to go down that road? Signs, screens, and displays. A lot of this is kind of bus stop stuff, and I believe we've all agreed that we need to get our static information at the bus stops up first.
Yeah.
And maybe have an actual, little bit more of a permanent presence at the Cultural Center before we do any kind of electronic signs down there. And then an onboard enunciation system is a premium feature of some of the AVL CAD systems, but the ones at this point, the ones we're talking about, I don't believe it's an available feature. And so at this point, we're recommending that our drivers just call the stops verbally the old-fashioned way. And then on the last page of the 3-pager, we have a table of projects that we think are lower priority. We've heard from you guys that it's not really appropriate for us to worry about at this time, such as some of the reporting and management analytics softwares that would be great to have, and they'll take data. First you have to have data, so this like Double Map's going to create us some data, especially if we are able to get tablet computers in each vehicle at some point. These management analytics software would then just make that easier for me to read, but I think we could get by. I'd just be tickled to read it in any format at this point. Same with automatic passenger counters. Our drivers, with the loads that we deal with, they can count very well. So it's kind of a technology for technology's sake. Electronic fare boxes, we've talked a lot about. They're expensive, and we're capital poor sort of right now, so I don't recommend we go down that road. But it's something that could be done in the future if funding were available. They're at least $15,000 a piece, and they basically just, count money and validate passes. Vehicle health monitoring there's a primitive one that's currently part of Geotabs, but I think to get their higher end one, we would have to pay extra. I haven't sensed that Nick needs that or wants that. And then there's also some driver training systems that detect pedestrians and blind spot aids and stuff, but those we're kind of leaving to First Transit because they handle the insurance and the driver training. So at this point, we don't recommend going much further with those. But that's an update on the transit technology projects.
All righty. Thank you. Those are some things to think about. as we plan our day to spend all day on the bus. We can live some of these things and ideas. So, okay, general manager verbal report.
Okay, I'll keep this real brief. I met with, I believe back in August, we had a closed session where the board met with the attorney, with Autumn, talked about our upcoming end of our first contract as managers of your system. And her and I met briefly just to talk overview, approach, schedule of things to come. We actually met this morning. So she's thinking of doing a closed session at the February meeting to update you guys.
Okay.
So it sounded like a good idea to me, so I think if you guys are willing to entertain that, we'll probably do that. My current contract ends on June 30th, so we still got a little bit of time. We are just about, we're closer, the good news is we're closer than we've ever been this time of year to being on budget. As you know, there's not, in my opinion, there's clearly not enough hours in the contract. But each year then we've fallen behind a little bit, and then our June billings get pushed into the next year, so it sort of snowballs and cascades. This year we did a pretty good job of slowing the work down at the start of the year, so we're not too far behind. I believe it's like 1 or 2% ahead of, or I guess you'd say over budget. So that's good. We should be okay to finish the fiscal year on budget. It just limits how much work, work we can get done. Well, how timely is that? Capital projects. I met today with Heidi from the county, and she's still open to an MOU approach to try to help our capital project delivery mechanism by entering into an official partnership with the county and the city, either or both, hopefully, to where we can have a project, just develop the scope, say, hey, we got a shelter, we want you to put it in here, it needs a little bit of concrete or it doesn't, and then just basically give them the project and have them deliver it and bill us. And that would make life so much easier than have to find a contractor and bid out each individual little project, which is where we're stuck now, which is especially problematic with me being remote. So she's interested in it. I need to find an appropriate sample for her to run with. So that was a productive meeting. It was good to see her again today. And
is there a requirement that we have 3 bids? I know that city and county, right, we're obligated to attain 3 bids, but more often than not, there's no one to bid.
Yes, we deal with the same stuff. Yeah, exactly. It would bypass that painful process because we run into the same things, and yes, we are. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it would bypass it. Would we still have to send out for bids, and if we don't receive 3, then we could?
I'm not following you.
So we're supposed to put out a bid for any kind of job that we have done, right?
Right.
We're supposed to get 3 bids. More often than not, we can't get 3 bids.
Right.
But we still have to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're trying to bypass that. I don't think we can.
I don't think we can, but what he's saying is that we'll have an MOU, so we'll still have to request 3 bids, and if we don't get any of those 3 bids, then we can utilize the services of the city or county.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And I think there might be a threshold of cost value on the project that might, if it's under a certain amount, we might be able to bypass it. Let me do some more research then.
Okay.
Because I think Heidi mentioned something like that too, and she explained that it was a certain dollar amount.
Yes.
Okay.
That if the project's above that, you got to try to bid it out, and then if nothing, if
I don't have
that.
a number in my head, but it's probably not the right one. So
Yeah, I'm not even going to throw it
Okay, so I think we're all on the same page. Let me verify that, but most of our projects are small,
Okay,
so it may work out.
yeah, I think it might, because I
Yeah.
think the threshold's fine.
And that's all I've got for my
Okay.
update
All
for
right.
now. Mhm.
But I like that. I like that direction. It's helpful. Okay. An operations report.
Hello again.
Chuck.
So are you ready for some numbers?
Oh, always.
All right. So since July, we had 128 from College of the Redwoods. And then in August, we had 242. Then in September is 265, October 288, and then November we dropped back down to 245, and so far in this.
Say October again.
I'm sorry?
Say October again.
October was 288
288, and then November went down?
to 245,
Okay, well, that's a week out of school.
right? And
So
then,
there's your difference.
right.
Okay.
And then so far in December, we've had 199.
Okay, so
Now-
you're probably gonna hit the same probably around November. So to me, that's really positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Humboldt State, not so much.
Well, we're gonna work on that one. I don't
yeah.
think, I don't think we did anything that we should have done down there to get it going. So let's go Humboldt State.
But in July was 1. Then we had a big increase to 26 in August.
Okay.
And in September was 18, October 10, November 19, and we've had 5 so far this month.
Okay, so. Okay.
So,
That's something else we need to tackle and think about.
yeah, I know that they got a stack of posters to put up because I took them down myself, but beyond that,
They got the posters, but did they get
did
put
they
up?
put up? I
Yeah.
have no control over that. So
And maybe somebody at Humboldt State could look around for us and see if they see
Oh,
See.
true.
Ooh, we just tasked Mr. Follman in
Yeah.
his first meeting here with us.
Yeah, welcome to the board, sir.
Yeah.
But it's our people going down there. It's from up here. They're starting up here. So it's somehow reaching them. We need to get creative. How are we going to reach them here to let them know that it's available? Is that Facebook? Is that Twitter? Is that, I don't know what that is. Is that the radio?
It's all of the.
Is it, yeah.
That's the part of the challenge
How
of
are we
marketing.
going to
It's-
reach the person who doesn't have a license, who needs to get to Humboldt State? Or a vehicle?
Yeah, yeah. I've had one conversation with a young lady that does have a vehicle, and I tried to convince her how much money she'd save to go towards tuition if she rode the bus.
I like that.
I don't know if she.
So we need to think about that one. We need to, I think we can find a very inexpensive way of pumping that up this year. Okay. Excellent.
All right. As far as the rest of the report, we've just at this point just have one bus that's down. They got to get some new brakes put on it.
Brakes are good.
But yeah, it fluctuates. Sometimes we have 3 or 4 buses down, but right now
Just
we just have the one. We're also holding steady on staffing. We did lose 1 driver, but we have 2 drivers that we're in the process of hiring and getting them started in training. So for the most part, we're doing pretty well there. We transported 27 people to the Thanksgiving dinner and had a couple of drivers donated their time, or didn't donate their time. They volunteered to work that day and transport people. So we were able to do that. We lost 1 route on the Orange route on the 17th because of the gunman at the hotel.
Yes.
That disrupted us, so we missed the 1 route, and then we spent the rest of the day doing a deviation that helped us to get all the stops, so we just run the route differently that day, but still got everybody where they needed to be. And then 2 days ago, when we lost the power line at North Crest and Washington, that caused us to do some deviation and missed a couple of stops for, once again, just 1 route, and we were able to pick those stops back up on the next one around. We did also so last week, Nick, our technician, was gone to training up in Portland, which meant that we had buses break down because he was gone. We've gone several months without any road call, and then we had 2 road calls while he was gone last week. But we were able to get the routes back up and going without disruption. But we did have those 2 buses break down on the road, and with the help of Fernando and Del Norte Tire, we got those buses back up before Nick got back. Then also this last weekend, we've experienced some shelter damage. We had at the grocery outlet stop, somebody stole one of our panels right out of the shelter. It's my understanding that they were apprehended. We have the plexiglass is back, but it's beyond repair. We're going to have to still replace it because of how they broke it.
I'm sorry, they stole the plexiglass?
The whole
out of
sheet,
the-
yeah.
The whole, oh, sounds legit.
Sled.
Yeah.
It's,
They put it in
It,
their truck and tried to drive away.
fits into the there's always something category.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the wind actually blew the one out over on Harding. Blew one of our sheets out there. So that's, we're in the we do have extra sheets. The last time we did all the repairs, we bought extra. So we're going to be able to get those put back together here very quickly.
Good.
Wow.
So that's about all I have for you. Unless you have any other questions?
You had some good news and some entertaining stories.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was a good report.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
All right, good.
What do we do for New Year's?
I'm sorry?
What do we do for New Year's? If someone, do we do anything out there for
We'll just
getting
run the
rides?
regular routes at this point.
I guess that I didn't ask.
Well, New Year's
ask
Eve.
that question
New Year's Eve.
properly.
I'm sorry, New Year's Day, we don't have service.
You don't have service on New Year's Day. On New Year's Eve, do we do free rides to those? Have we ever thought about doing something to promote our business? I mean, it just popped in my head when you said those guys did something for Thanksgiving. I mean, what would that cost us to advertise? Kind of, like, we could be opening a can of worms, but maybe not. I mean, letting people know that we will get you home safely on a bus ride on New Year's Eve. I don't even know if it would be feasible. I don't know what routes would work.
A general vicinity.
My first reservation is the safety of my drivers.
Yeah, no, and that's a very important, but also the safety of others on the road is important as well. And I don't know, and maybe not this New Year's, but maybe we look at it for next year, something that we could do, a designated dial-a-ride guy. You know what I mean? One person who we pay to be out there. I don't know, just a thought.
Back in the old days, but we could do it. It would probably be a little late in the game to pull it off now, staffing-wise. Chuck's giving me that look. We are 2 weeks away or so. But yeah, in the future, we definitely could. It'd probably be, if we did a dial-a-ride or 2 vehicles, or maybe run a couple of the fixed route, it could be done for just, a few $100. And it might be, the kind of thing that builds trust with the community.
And yeah, I think it would be huge, and I agree, it is too late, but I'd like to look at that for next year. I think it's important, and in our small community, people will hear about it, talk about it, and I think goodwill goes a long way.
Absolutely, and it's very rewarding to see the number of vehicles parked out in front of
The places?
the places that have events. There's a lot of cars the next morning, and that means that somebody somehow got a ride, crawled home, cab, whatever,
Right.
I'm always a driver on New Year's Eve, so
Okay.
Know
the
who to
kids,
call.
my friends, that's what I do.
It might, I definitely
That's a
think
good
it would build goodwill,
Yeah.
and a lot of our establishments around here would appreciate making sure that their patrons get home safely, so that's a great idea.
It's the kind of thing that could help them to also promote us all year long.
Yes.
I mean, we don't run real late at night, but we
That
know,
goodwill.
we all know some people that maybe have a couple too many early. So
There are those.
we could be there for those guys. One other thing, I wanted to thank Chuck for, we were able to work together that on Nick's recent training trip to Portland, I mentioned earlier, we had him inspect a couple of vehicles exactly like the ones we want to buy, because there's none around here, and good luck getting a dealer to bring a demo to Crescent City. So Nick was able to go visit Chuck's old friends at Yamhill Transit up in the Portland area and see a couple of these and verify that we really like them. So thanks, Chuck, for making that happen on the same trip.
Do you want to talk about days?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I kind of would. I would just wanted to see how the board members we have here today would react to possibly moving our meeting date in the future, some point away from the Wednesday, because it's right in the middle of my week and it eats up like 3 days to, right in the middle of the week for me to come down. If we could look at a Monday or a Friday to where I could travel some on the weekends.
You like the Friday?
I like Friday.
Yeah, Mondays looks like it would be harder on
Yeah.
the calendar upstairs. We kind of glanced at it. Fridays are wide open. And we probably need to set our days or our months. So if we're in agreement of going to the third Friday or whatever, or are we on the third
Third, yeah.
Wednesday?
Yeah, we're on third
To go to
Wednesday.
the third Friday, then maybe talk right now and pick those 8 months of next year. Is that what we're going to try to do, is 8 and then, or?
We've been shooting for 6, but 6 to 8-ish, yeah.
I think
mean,
setting 8, and if we find, if Madam Chair finds that there's really nothing coming up for her to do the next meeting, we can always cancel it versus trying to
or
pull it
bump
together.
something, yeah.
What do you think?
That's-
Do you want to
that's
try to
fine with
pick
me.
6 or 8, or that's up to you, Madam Chair?
I think that picking Friday, is 3:30 still good, or could we push it to 4?
I think
Is 4
4.
o'clock okay with you? We just,
For
we
us,
have a
yeah.
new council member that I think 4 o'clock might work for them better.
Okay.
So,
Are you talking about Alex?
no,
Oh,
a new city council member who teaches in Klamath.
are they going to be joining us on this?
Maybe,
Oh, okay.
maybe they'll be extended that invitation at some point.
Okay, so, yeah, for me, you know, if I'm in town and I'm in town, it doesn't matter. If we're looking at the,
You're looking at 3:30 or 4, it doesn't matter.
yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't matter. Half an hour is not going to make a difference to me.
Okay. So let's,
So we're not do you want to pick the months now, or do you want to wait?
let's wait until
The next meeting on February?
February, because you're going to be bringing back a fair bit of information for us to be talking about as far as, you know, tech stuff and,
Yeah.
So do we want to do that meeting in February on the 15th? On that third Wednesday? Or are we going to wait completely and switch date and times?
let's switch
Going
day and
forward.
time.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a, majority here. We could vote on it if we need to do that.
So we would be looking at February 15th. That means our husbands aren't taking us away for the weekend.
That's right.
At least not until 5 o'clock.
Yeah. And so I'm going to put our meeting in at 4 o'clock on that date, or we're going to keep it at, RCT. Are
Okay.
we going to keep it at 3:30?
4 o'clock on Friday the 15th.
Okay.
Joe, does that late work for you?
Yeah, that works fine.
Well,
Alex?
he can't leave.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can't leave till we're
so,
done. That's fine.
so all we need to do, and I don't know who does this, if you do it, Joe, but who checks with upstairs? I know it's blank, because we already looked at it. But Kylie, well, I shouldn't say that. Kylie
Yeah.
is just now starting to work on next year's.
Yeah, I sent her an email about vacancies, but I can.
Okay, she left early today. Yeah, say we're looking at the third Friday of every month instead.
I'll email Robin.
And I'll let her know.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent.
She's really nice, as long as I don't know about.
Yeah, and we're looking, and we'll set, then we'll go ahead and set the whole year in February's meeting. Yeah, I don't know, I think it's pretty easy. We always, I don't, usually you don't do a November and a January. You don't
Yeah.
usually do one in the summer. And then you pick another one in the spring. It's not, and then the rest kind of
Right.
fall into place. But that's just my thought, for what it's worth.
January, we're
Yeah.
not.
No. Yeah, we weren't really planning on it regardless of the day change.
Okay,
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys considering my request. That'll be really helpful.
Of course. All right, so do we have any announcements other than Alex is here?
yay! And I just would like to talk to you guys really quick about the January.
Oh, yes, okay. But we're adjourned
Okay.
until February 15th at 5 o'clock?
4 o'clock.
I mean 4 o'clock. 5 o'clock, we're done. 5 o'clock, we're going away. All right, thanks.